You're listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience, a podcast dedicated to helping executives train their sales and marketing teams to optimize growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's accelerate your growth in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everyone, to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. I'm your host, Carlos Noche, and today we're talking about building a successful SaaS company from the ground up. How do you scale from a good idea to a productive business? And to help us out with that, we have Ben Johnson, founder and CEO of Particle41, a global software consultancy that offers end-to-end product development services. Ben is also a serial entrepreneur with a track record of success. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thank you, Carlos. It's great to be here.
All right, Ben, question that we start every podcast with so our audience gets to know you a little bit better. What might be something that you're passionate about that those that know you through work might be surprised to know about you?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I'm pretty transparent with the people that I work with. I consider them not just coworkers, but friends as well. I am a man of faith, and lately I've just been really focusing on mindset. I don't think they would know that when I was a teenager, I did get a black belt in karate. The 3 truths and a lie, that tends to be the thing that stumbles people.
Nice. Are you still keeping up with your karate?
I have not. I live in suburban Dallas, Texas, and it's pretty trendy to carry a gun, and not so. My son is in BJJ, but I have not gotten the courage or the desire to get temporarily injured to join him on the mats. But I have a lot of great friends that are into that.
So it's funny because I think I've always wanted to do a martial art. I had a cousin that was really great at judo, and I always thought, well, it's too late. I don't want to get beat up by a 7-year-old. And nowadays, I got a bad shoulder. I got, forget it. I've passed my prime, so I'm gonna have to get back in shape to get beat up by a 7-year-old in the future.
That's right. That's right. I figure I'll just work on running fast and see where that puts me.
Good strategy. So Ben, topic of the day, I've worked for and I've consulted with hundreds of different companies, and I've seen technology companies that have a great idea, concept, but really struggle to scale beyond those early adopters, right? They really struggle in scaling that business. What might be some of your strategies that you've seen and employed to really make a successful SaaS or tech company work?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it just runs a gamut. I think, until you get to about $1 million in ARR, you're constantly trying to figure out if you've really reached product market fit. So I think the primary thing is talking to your customers, because even if you get those first 10 subscribers, I usually approach a business as the technical co-founder. So I'm taking a product and engineering role. Whereas my co-founder generally will take the financing, and then we figure out which one of us, if he's purely focused on fundraising with me as a kind of a co-pilot in the fundraising role, then, how much time does the co-founder he or she have to look at sales and marketing? So I've done quite a bit of that too, but I first focus on, do we have the right features, and are the users giving us feedback about those features? And then those early adopters become really great. Some people will set up a CAB and kind of a client advisory board and kind of get some more insight from those early users as to what more they need from the software. And I call it a demand-driven roadmap, right? What are their demands? How can we put those things into the roadmap? Implement them not in a bespoke way, but in a way that will benefit other users like them. And then we just keep leaning into that. I've seen some people really focus early on maybe a tech-enabled service instead of the SaaS, like super early on, so they can get to the first dollar faster. But SaaS is a challenging game because your business is features. So having a kind of a fast, limber dev team to get to the critical mass of features, and you're kind of in a race, right? At some point, you'll have enough features to start driving demand, and the product will start to sell itself. But in the early days, I feel like you're more selling a listening ear and somebody who's willing to take that feedback from the customers and immediately put it into action. And those early users, if they see that their feedback is being taken into account, then that's really great for them, because they feel like, man, I'm not just paying a subscription, I'm paying for a tech team to add to my business, to help me with my business. And that's what I've seen work the best in those early days. But the really critical part to that is implementing those features in a way that they benefit your future customers, not getting into a trap where you're implementing things for specific customers, but that you're interrogating their ideas to make sure that they're beneficial for all.
So Ben, I was, recently I did a podcast with Kim Kaminsky, who's a friend and CMO that I work with, and one of the things she was talking about is putting the customer first, and I couldn't, agree more. So since you mentioned this customer side of it and doing, talking to the customer, so within your organization, whether it's young, middle, or mature, how do you keep that going? Because so many organizations, I think they get caught up in their own Kool-Aid, and I see a lot of people doing stuff internally, but not really keeping on that pulse of the customer and the market that's around them. Is have you seen that as a challenge for some organizations?
It can be as you get larger. I think in the early days, you're all wearing so many hats. You're wearing the product owner hat and the customer success hat, and so and that's great because you're straddling both sides of a line. And hopefully you've partnered with talented co-founders, or again that early team is heavily scrutinized, because they need to be able to wear those multiple hats. They need to have that generalism, and so they're receiving some of the inbound inquiry. Now, as you get bigger, those roles tend to separate. And we do practical things like the customer success folks have a Slack channel, the product people are in there with them, and the product folks are helping them answer some of those questions. And then we also enable the customer success folks to work on documentation. We've used tools like Pendo to build interactive guides in the software kind of as you're going, because onboarding in SaaS can become a critical success factor, making sure people know as you're adding these features, do people even know they exist and how to find them and how to set them up, customize them for their use? This becomes the next hurdle. It's like, I don't want to have to spend a day with each customer to get them effective in using the software where they won't churn out. So, onboarding is kind of front and center just as you get past that critical massive features. And you don't want to be doing that customer by customer, or you'll have both sides of the issue. You'll have conversion issues. You'll have trouble keeping them.
I agree, Ben. So, Ben, all right. So, this is another thing you kind of alluded to it. I was, for example, working with this robotics company. They were early on, and as we were talking, one of the things I said is, they had some interest from Amazon, and one of the things that they shared with me, they would kill us. They would take a year and a half to maybe make a decision. We would invest millions in trying to win the bid, and by then we'll run out of money. So how do you make that choice of what features or things do you do today to sort of, to make that, run, versus getting kind of caught up with maybe, the Big Kahuna customer that might take you back?
These are great problems to have, to be honest. The reason why is then I think the only question you have to ask yourself is, are we building for that big kahuna? Are we building things that would also benefit us? And then that's when you look at your investors and say, hey, are you ready to go on this ride? Because we're going to need to increase staff. As a partner, a tech partner, we have the outsource option to help you really solve that kind of peak. It's like you're going to have to build a lot of features really quickly. I think of a bell curve. And so we kind of parachute in with some extra people to work shoulder to shoulder with you, help you bust through the bell curve of features, get Amazon or the big kahuna like what they want. And those are pressurized projects. We love that pressure, odd to say. And demand driven roadmaps, typically what you don't want to do is you don't want to give the partner both control of the date and the scope. You need to keep one. You need to say, hey, we realize that you need some capabilities by a certain date, but how we implement those capabilities and the scope to them, the sophistication of them, that's up to us. Or you say, okay, you want all of these things. Let us truly plan this initiative and give you the date. If you give up both of those two things, your team is going to be under the gun for quite some time. And the only choice you'll have is to add resources, and you need to make that choice early. So we help people with that all the time, and it is a great problem to have, because without that big B2B partner, a lot of times your idea will just sit there and kind of waffle. And I would not necessarily take the posture of your buddy to say, "Oh, we can't handle it. We're too early." Because how else are you going to get there? It is a race, regardless. It is a race for critical mass of features that the market will respond to. You might as well have the Big Kahuna help you fund that, and show those letters of intent and those potential contracts to investors so that they can participate in that good news. In PR, no publicity is bad publicity. In SaaS, no interest in your product is bad interest in your product. I firmly believe that.
All right, Ben. So I'm with you. I'm just going to challenge you a little bit. Don't beat me up on this one, but sometimes you start the company, you have this ideal customer profile. This is where we're going as a company. And that Big Kahuna comes along, their vision is the same. And what about that situation? Because it's very tempting to go off course, to go where they want to go is not really where we want to go, but that money would be nice and that logo would be nice. But ultimately, that may not be a product that ideally we wanted to sell or is as resellable as we thought. Does that make sense?
Sure, there is such a thing as the audience of one, and I did insinuate that at the beginning of what I said. Like, if you're not, if the Big Kahuna is not representing a set of features that would be offerable to others, if it's an audience of one, then yeah, there is some concern there that you're pivoting, and you're pivoting into, and you're not pivoting into an audience, you're pivoting into this one customer that needs this one set of things. The great thing about open source and about tech these days, though, is typically those bigger customers just need some of the features at scale, or they need features that maybe you could get away not doing with the smaller masses, right? So you can multi-thread your team, maybe have a couple of pods of teammates and start focusing on some of those things. Reporting is always this huge feature, but there's so many great reporting solutions out there that can come alongside your application, not slow down the feature development, but also address the big customer needs. And so I think that's all plannable. And of course, I'd have to have a body snatcher moment to truly understand the decision making. I think there is creativity that you can use to make sure that you're addressing the Big Kahuna's needs, but not alienating your ICP. And you have to be open to pivot a little bit. But what I usually see is that your idea is solid. That's what got you in the communication with the Big Kahuna in the first place. It's just that they want some of those things that tend to happen later, like reporting. The dynamic pricing and discounts is a common thing. These are kind of features that you just thought would be out there, and they're asking for them now. So the perfect time to multi-thread the team to be able to do both.
So, Ben, here's my last example. I'm using this as therapy. So I'll talk to founders and I'll go, so what are your like top 3 competitive differentiators? And they'll tell me, well, Carlos, we don't have any competition. We're unique. We're one of a kind. Have you ever heard that before?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yep.
And part of my feeling is if you're so unique, you mean you've seen something in the market that no one else has. And I kind of question, do you really have a market? But I love your perspective, because sometimes I'm trying to convince these founders of, hey, I get that you're unique, but your customers are trying to compare you to something in order to make a buying decision. So, how do I bridge that gap sometimes with these very enthusiastic founders?
Yeah, I think the in the same conversation, maybe even in the same paragraph of communication, you will also say, okay, well, if your customers don't exist, if you didn't exist, what would your customers do? And before Uber, they would take a taxi. I know the Uber example is always cliche, but there was something that they were doing. And even though at the early days you would say Uber didn't have competition, mobile device ordering a ride, there was still an alternative. So even if there's no competition, there's still something you're trying to get the user to go from to. And so we do like a from to analysis. And then we look at, okay, how do we impact that from to analysis? Because people, if your product is not good enough, then they will just keep doing what they're doing today. And so while you might not be competing with like some brand, you are competing with the current way of life and you need them to adopt the new way of life that you're selling. So you are competing with something, right? You're at least competing with the fact that the customer doesn't know you exist.
When I got out of the ERP space, I went into the CRM business, and back then it was really support trouble ticket. And I know when I got into it, one of the ways they described it is, we're competing against a piece of paper,
That's
right?
right.
People would write down the trouble ticket, and then, hey, here, let's hand it off to the next person to go work on it. And like you said, they're doing something, even if it's manual. I mean, if they're not doing something, you're wondering, well, do they really need to do anything?
Yeah. So one of my ventures was called Legal Inc., and we sold it to LegalZoom, literally 3 years from start to finish. I joined in 2015. We sold it to LegalZoom in 2018. And at one point, just to dovetail with your story, we would take orders to form LLCs or to do annual reports or to keep small business, not just small businesses, but businesses in compliance with their Secretary of State. And a big business has to be registered in every state that they have employees at the very least. And if you're e-commerce, you might even need to be registered in all, depending on how sales tax rolls. So you end up with all this, multi-state jurisdiction, and that software helped with that. And so we started branching into law firms, and they would have that exact adoption curve. At one point, we were working with Denton's largest law firm in the world. We just said, hey, give us the orders any which way. We'll give you ProServe professional services help to get your orders in and let you see how the SaaS solution works. We got faxed copies of Legal Pad with corporate structure written on them. And we took that Legal Pad and set up a demo for them. But yes, we were competing with paper in the law space. The idea that we could digitally take this company information and go do these different jurisdictional filings was a huge adoption for these law firms, especially the wonderful paralegal customer that knew, well, I go fill out this form at this place and I go fill out this form at this place. We were like, no, just fill out one form on our website, on our tool. We will go do all of that for you. And this was just kind of a light bulb moment for all those paralegal customers.
Yeah, I mean, that was products like that are a huge productivity gain that, some people can't wrap their heads around. And then even just keeping it up. I own a couple of different companies, and just keeping it all straight and worrying at night that am I doing the right thing at all one of my companies across every state I'm in can be worrisome. So I'm thinking about opening up another company, Ben. So I might be one of your customers of your old company. Uh,
That'd be great.
all right. So we think about these SaaS companies, tech companies growing up, and they start developing these departments like marketing and sales and service and customer success. And obviously, we got product because we're constantly continuing to develop the product that we have. Any suggestions on how do you drive alignment that can actually scale across these functions?
So the main mechanism that I use for interdepartmental alignment is the OKR goal setting process. Like, what are we trying to achieve? Sales is a huge part of this. They're the ones saying, "Hey, I want to add $2-3 million in revenue to the top line this year," and then we kind of work backwards from there. Okay, well, how many salespeople is that? How many leads do you need? And then we're kind of giving that input into marketing and trying to kind of make the math make sense. Like, we're doing some sanity checking based on, what did we do last year and how did that flow? So I love seeing the objective key result or some people will use SMART goals, kind of the same thing, different name, where we can really get clear. Because just like fitness, if you don't have a daily habit, if you don't know what you're supposed to get done today, you're probably not going to get to a goal in the future. And so I think that really drives a lot of alignment, having those conversations about, hey, what is the goal? What are how do we measure the goal? And then some level of cascading into the other departments to say, well, I'm going to support that goal with my goal of, hey, I need to give you 10 leads a week. If I don't give you 10 leads a week and your conversion rate is, 10%, then we're working, right? We're working together properly. So my job is to give you 10 leads a week. That's marketing's function. Then sales's function is to have a 10% close rate on those leads or give feedback. And that's a healthy debate that we should always be having. But at least people know what kind of numbers they're trying to hit.
So it seems like early on in these organizations, I mean, it's a smaller group, so they do a great job, let's say, of communicating. As they get bigger, I kind of feel like they get kind of siloed. And for example, even in the OKRs, sometimes what ends up happening, and I love your advice, and I think it's kind of what you just talked about. Let's say marketing or business development. Hey, I did my job. I generated these amount of leads. It's the other departments that aren't doing their aspect of the job. And that's where you start seeing these frictions that really limit your ability to scale and grow. Any suggestions there to kind of help smooth that out? I know you talked a little bit about, hey, it's not only about creating your OKR, it's also how that impacts and affects the other departments. So I think that's the start.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, this is what it means to be a founder, right? Or a CEO, is pushing those different folks. And like I always say, I'm the micromanager of culture. I want to micromanage the culture. I want to make sure that there's, so what I'm looking for is, okay, hey, we're going to have some arguments that are healthy for the business. They have to happen if the business is going to succeed. So lead quality versus conversion rate is always going to be that kind of debate. So can we put some things into the process that help make that more objective, not subjective? So if sales says, "Hey, these leads are crap," like, okay, let's see, what is your script? How do you know? Where did the data go wrong to tell us that that was an ICP that you should be talking to? And we can go look at, okay, marketing, how are you helping qualify? We can work through that. But I'm especially looking for toxic traits in argumentation. I'm looking for, hey, are people communicating with word salad? Like they're just not being clear. And then I kind of emphasize, hey, in our organization, it's our job, our personal job to be understood. So we can't get away with like, they just don't understand. That doesn't fly. So are you being understood? Is your point being made clear? That's your personal responsibility. And then we just kind of talk about those other toxic traits of argumentation, right? Are we being effective in that debate? And then are we taking responsibility for the things that are in our area that we have control over? And being humble through that is super important, where you get like, hey, there's always something I can do to improve. And everyone's job is constant improvement in their area. And then just looking for additional ways to measure and make that whole process of refinement as objective and data driven as possible.
I love your comment about word salad. The when I deal with larger organizations, I always find individuals and roles where I feel like they're not doing much of anything work wise, but they're really good at talking and using all sorts of flowery words to describe things. And I go, these are the same words you used last year and nothing's happened. And I'm just surprised they continue to pay you. But I'll get off my therapy session. So we kind of talk about having this framework for communication because I think it's key from from marketing to sales to service. So let's talk the other side. So sales does a great job and sells that initial client. And in a SaaS model, I've heard that, hey, getting that initial win is like 20% of the battle. Actually fulfilling on that promise, providing value for that client so that they not only renew, but buy more and promote the other 80% of the battle. any strategies on how do we take what we've learned through that marketing and sales cycle into our services, customer success, and ultimately back to product?
Yeah, a really good relationship with those sales folks is super key because as they close, they're getting key needs, and whether you like it or not, SaaS is going to be a solution sell. So you're going to hear about all kinds of adjacent solutions from the sales guy. The sales guy's going to say, "Well, if you had better reporting, I could close more. This person really needs XYZ feature because that's the way their workflow works." We just make sure all of those go somewhere. They go into a list, and that we're meeting as a executive team to monitor the level of effort. Is this a small, medium, large in terms of technical effort? Is this a small, medium, large in terms of business value? And of course, we want to try to target the smalls and mediums on tech effort to the large mediums on the business effort. And then sometimes there's like a gut feel, like a just good, like, hey, if we do it this way, that will satisfy the majority of customers. And you're just analyzing that constantly, making sure that the next set of things, I call them big rocks, right? We're doing small things, little tweaks, things that people have mentioned, additional ways to configure the software maybe, and we're tweaking, and we call that kind of the sand or the small rocks. And then we have these big rocks. And most organizations are only going to be able to do a couple of big rocks per quarter. So you have to be very careful about those and that doesn't get any easier the bigger you get, because all of those big rocks, they take onboarding and marketing to upsell or cross sell those new features to the existing customer base. So I hope I didn't word salad that answer, but I don't think there's an easy approach other than listening really closely to what sales is saying that their new customers want, and as a product owner, being part of those conversations, and also looking at the handoff, that whole onboarding process is always, for every SaaS company I've ever worked with, that onboarding process, that handoff from sales to usage and adoption of the platform. There's so much disillusionment that can happen there because sales can't control the hope that the customer has of the result that the purchase is going to make within their organization. And so that onboarding gets to mitigate them being disillusioned that what they were sold is not what's happening. And so we want to control that so that we continue to have happy customers. And then do we also need sales to just to articulate more clearly? Of course, you don't want sales is never going to say, well, these are all the reasons why you don't want to use the software. But we just need to make sure that we're being as ethical as possible in the sales process.
I think transparency is key, and I think customers appreciate it. In fact, here's one of the things, I'll just throw this out as a suggestion, Ben. We try to do, or me and my team is, hey, can we, in that sales process, can we create a mutual success plan? And in that mutual success plan, it is not a closed plan. No one out there wants to be closed. What I really mean is, hey, what's the business goals the customer has, underlying challenges, how do they want to address them? And obviously we can help influence that so we're the right fit. And if we're not the right fit, we're probably not in the right account. And then the other three aspects are, what are the outcomes they want? Who are all the individuals that need to get involved? And then what are the steps and timing? And in the steps and timing, this is where it's not just, we're going to do a demo and an evaluation, get through procurement and win. It's also, hey, when do we kick off the project? What does that handoff look like? When is the expectations for this first phase happen? When do they need to actually achieve those outcomes and hit their business? And if you would take that type of information, it helps drive not only the sales cycle, it creates a great tool as a handoff to services and customer success because they can continue on this journey with the customer. And organizations that I think that do that well, it doesn't create extra work for sales. It does not, it's really appreciated by the other side of the organization on a services and customer success side. And not only them, but then product likes to know, hey, so what are our customers' expectations? What kind of outcomes are they seeing? Marketing wants to know the same information, and it gets us all on the same page. And I don't know, do you think something like that might work?
Yeah, that sounds great. What did you call that deliverable?
I call it a mutual success plan. One of my clients renamed it a mutual engagement plan because they do these multi-million dollar type projects. But, you know, you can call it whatever you like, but a mutual success plan, which is focused on customer success, not even on go live, because let's face it, it's buying a license. I'm just going to take LegalZoom, buying a license for LegalZoom. Woohoo! I'm online. Doesn't mean I got any value out of it. And you mentioned it earlier. They have to actually adopt the product and use it to actually get the outcomes they want. So ultimately, that's what you're looking for. How long is it going to take them to get trained, adopt the product, and get value out of it? What's that time frame? And it's that time frame that you can also then leverage to actually accelerate your sales cycle. Because some people tell me, Carl, it's a lot of information. That's going to slow down the sale. What are you talking about? It's going to slow you down later on, because when they get the pressure of having to actually say yes and sign a contract is when all those fears and uncertainty and doubt comes into their mind of, well, am I really going to get these outcomes, and when?
Sure. Yeah, I like that. And bringing out what they really want, aside from the contract, saying, "Hey, here's the mutual success plan," and hashing that out. That's going to be a key to for agreement signing. Anyways, I didn't say close.
I like that.
And
You're right. You're right. I
and
mean, they need to close somewhere in the middle of this. We want that to happen as a step, but to have that step happen, we need all the rest around it.
Yeah, I think that's a great deliverable. That's a great noun, the mutual success plan to accompany your onboarding. Onboarding being the activities that tech and customer success is doing to bring them through through the onboarding. But having this as kind of a guiding document for the onboarding plan is really helpful.
All right. So I got another question for you. So sometimes, you get a great leadership team or a new leadership team. They come together, they create their OKRs, they have a plan. That plan is way too big. In other words, I just talked to an organization, and I usually start my coaching classes. Hey, what are your big goals for this year or the next 3 to 5 years? And they go, set level of net ARR, new customer. But they go on, and there's like 13 to 15 items on the list. And I'm like, oh, wow, you guys you're expecting a lot. How do you, as the leader of culture, create the big rocks really, and create that focus on the big rocks, and so that they don't get overwhelmed?
Yeah, so that's great. I think the OKR strategy is to limit the high level goals to 3 to 5. That's kind of the guidance from the book, if you will. Like, hey, can we boil this down to 3 to 5? The other thing I look for is, are there tasks on the goal sheet? It just happens every time where, hey, these are tasks, these are activities. Let's separate some of the corporate initiatives from the goals. And sometimes what that does is I go through a process of saying, well, what things need to be true in order for you to hit that goal? So, the goal is like, we're going to have an NPS score of, 90%. Okay. Are you tracking NPS today? Well, no. Okay. Well, that then becomes a corporate initiative, implement some form of NPS tracking. How long is that going to take you? Oh, well, that may take us a quarter to get that in place. Okay. Well, you now have that as a goal here on your top 5, but there's some preliminary work that needs to be done. And so I think the process of breaking down and the cue here is always like, okay, what things need to be true for us to hit this goal? And as folks start to itemize those corporate initiatives, those activities, then it starts to become clear that their eyes are a little bigger than their stomach, and we can kind of hone it in. The other thing that I like to look for is this even mathematically, does this work out on a napkin here? So you want to increase revenue. You just said you want to increase revenue to this number. That's double what you did last year. How many leads did you have? How many salespeople did you have? Can we work out some of those conversion rates to see if doubling is possible? And do you have the dry powder to be able to go double the sales team or double the marketing spend? And once those cause and effects start to click in, it's like, hey, what about 30% this year? Okay, yeah, but like, this is where we're at. We can do 30% more marketing. We can do 30% more sales team. that now we're starting to come into some realm of reality. But that's always a great analytical process. But I typically see that tasks and goals are convoluted together. And so the goals, instead of just being the clear target of what the result and how we're going to manage that we've hit the result, is conflated with all these things that need to be true, things we need to do. And we start to separate those two. We get a really crisp set of goals and a really crisp set of activities. The other thing I see is people working in the business versus on the business, because that set of corporate activities are going to be working on the business. They're going to be kind of separate from like making the customers happy and getting the customers onboarded and getting them sold. And so we also need to acknowledge that there's like customer focus work being done, and then there's the on the business, like creating a more mature enterprise. That takes a whole set of separate work and maybe even a couple of separate people. And a lot of organizations aren't quite ready for the on the business focus. And they'll immediately get distracted by the in the business focus.
Great point. All right. Last question on this part. So, I mean, going through analyzing your OKRs, really filtering through them so that we have a clear focus down to that 3 or 5. How often do we revisit it? Is it every quarter? Is it every month with individuals? Is it every week on one-on-one calls? How often do you think is best practice?
Yeah. So best practice for me was, what are our monthly numbers? What did we do last month? As part of the monthly close, we're going back and saying, hey, a month is a business iteration. Look, I'm a tech guy. I'm on the engineering and product side. So I'm also looking at how is the roadmap supporting. The funny thing about tech is it's probably the most heavily monitored part of the organization, the earliest. So we have to do a lot of work to get sales and marketing, measured and looking at the data. Tech, for some reason, because of our sprints and our agile process and our issue trackers, tends to have a lot of visibility like really early on. And so I'm able to set an example of saying like, hey, my velocity was X. We got this number of things done. We got this number of bugs resolved. I'm able to bring those to that monthly meeting and then encourage sales, marketing, maybe HR, people side, customer success to also bring their numbers. And then I'm also looking for like, what kind of data issues are they having? Are they able to track the things that they need to track? And maybe the tech needs to support them with that visibility. So those meetings are really great for me because I either need to help them track better, or those are inputs that are coming back to me to make the product better. So I think I'm typically having maybe a little more frequent cadence to make sure we're building the right things and that the things we're building are going into the organization and being well received. But at least once a month, we come back and say, hey, draw the line in the sand. How is our monthly revenue? What were our sales targets? What's all that stuff look like? And then calibrate and correct.
I love the monthly focus because quarterly is definitely not enough, and so much happens. So, hey, Ben, this has been excellent. They're going to yell at me if I go too long. So, I'll give you my last question today. I call it the acceleration insights. What might be that one piece of advice, be it business or personal, by the way, that you would love to share with our listeners so they can be as successful as you are?
So I would say on your marketing messaging, this is going to seem way out of left field, but it's a huge lesson I've learned lately. On your marketing messaging out to your customers, so your website, your emails, when you're trying to get those prospects, just consider the power of you-based language rather than we and our. I'm starting to see it all over the internet now as I've learned this little tip that the you-based language, it jumps off the page at you because you're talking to me, the ICP, the target customer. You're explaining what I need. You're relating to me. We're not shoulding on the customer. We're not telling you should buy this because nobody likes to be should on. But the idea of speaking, knowing your customer well enough to talk directly to them, I think it's very ineffective to say, we do this, we do this, we do this, and make the mind of the customer say, oh, they do that. That's something that I need. Instead, we need to use you-based marketing. And so I've recently, within the past 6 months, learned about the Story brand by Donald Miller. And it's completely changed the way that I articulate my products and services. And I've seen a huge increase in conversion just about everywhere I've implemented it. So this is something that I would definitely check out. It's hard at first, and most marketers will not understand because they're understanding your business, and then they're just putting themselves in your shoes. So all their work product comes out as we, our, because they're relating to you and they're describing you. But you need to, this is very important to get through that and then really think, how do I speak directly to my customer? Do I know my customer well enough to address their key needs in the language? And you'll know you've gotten there when you see you-based messaging, not we and our-based messaging. So that's been really a shift for me.
Excellent. I think it's a great advice. And it's really about our customers, not about us, in that
Right.
messaging. So I thought that was awesome. Perfect. Hey, if our listeners wanted to get to know you better, or if they want to, learn more about Particle 41 and the services you provide, what might be the best way for them to engage with you?
I have my Calendly link all over the internet on Particle 41's website. You can arrange a meeting. You can talk directly to me. So my Calendly link is on my LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn or on our website, particle41.com, and just book a call and let's talk. You can also reach me at ben@particle41.com, but I would love to hear from anyone. I do a significant amount of CTO advisory, and so I would love to share experiences, how I built 5 businesses and sold them, and help anybody with their SaaS journey.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I thought you had some great insights, so really appreciate it, Ben.
Thank you, Carlos. It's been great.
All right, folks, that ends our episode for today. Thank you so much for listening in. Please check us out at www.b2brevexec.com or your favorite platform, podcast platform, whether it be Spotify, YouTube, Google, whatever. And if you find us on iTunes, please give us a 5-star review. We'd be greatly appreciated. I'm Carlos Noche. And until next time, I wish you nothing but the best success.
You've been listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.